I'm going to show you a couple of pieces of video that really kind of illustrate the unique nature of this storm.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're discussing everything you need to know about Hurricane Milton.
Hurricane Milton had maximum sustained wind speeds of 165 miles an hour.
Even before anyone uttered the name Milton, the 2024 Atlantic hurricane season was already one for the history books. In July, Hurricane Beryl became the season's first storm to reach Category 5, the peak of the Saffir-Simpson scale. Florida's Big Bend is still dealing with the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, which surfaced in late September.
This storm is easily the most destructive that I've seen.
Yet Milton may go down as one of the most intense Atlantic hurricanes ever. 2 days after forming on October 5th, Milton was upgraded to Category 5.
National Hurricane Center says Milton, currently a Category 5 storm, could be one of the most destructive on record for the Tampa Bay area of Florida.
For context, Beryl reached Category 5 after 4 days, while Helene never exceeded Category 4. Milton fluctuated between Categories 5 and 4 before dropping to 3 on October 9th. The chaotic cyclone still promised to be devastating upon making landfall.
The hard work now begins with daybreak here as we get a portrait of the damage, the destruction from Hurricane Milton, which came crashing ashore last night.
Milton has caused flooding in Mexico and Cuba. Parts of the Bahamas and Georgia were also on alert.
You'll notice there that this system does not make a direct landfall on Georgia, but you don't have to have a direct landfall on our state to feel some of the impacts.
It became clear early on that Milton would leave its most significant mark in Florida. Preparing for landfall, all eyes were initially on Tampa Bay, which hadn't endured a major hurricane since 1921.
The storm is expected to bring life-threatening storm surge for the Tampa Bay area and West Coast.
While Florida is no stranger to hurricanes, Milton appeared to be an entirely different beast. After Governor Ron DeSantis declared a state of emergency, millions were ordered to evacuate. Panic buying ensued as locals stocked up on groceries and gasoline. Animals from the Zoo Tampa and Florida Aquarium were also moved for safety. To those hoping to ride out the storm, Tampa Mayor Jane Castor issued a blunt message.
If you choose to stay in one of those evacuation areas, you're going to die.
In addition to coastal cities like Tampa, inland locales like Orlando would take precautions.
As you noted, the rain has started here, but we have not seen the worst of Milton yet.
Walt Disney World, Universal Orlando, and SeaWorld Orlando all closed as Milton neared. This is only the 11th time Disney World has been forced to shut down since 1971. Along with theme parks, Central Florida Airport ceased operations as well.
I want to show you some video of some of the last passengers at Tampa's airport this morning. It closed, and it's not going to reopen until after Milton goes through.
Several airports across Florida remained open, but numerous flights were canceled. While tourists had their trips ruined, Florida residents stood to lose much more.
Tampa Bay to Sarasota to Venice could see 10 to 15 feet of ocean water pushing onto land.
Those evacuated feared they might not have a home to return to. Early forecasts suggested that floods could range from 8 to 12 feet in Tampa, which has a low elevation.
Flash flooding is occurring. It's not predicted, it's absolutely occurring.
It was the National Hurricane Center's highest storm surge forecast for Tampa to date. Despite decreasing to a Category 3 as it approached, Milton still expanded in size as tornadoes were unleashed.
Holy crap.
While Milton was expected to hit Tampa first, the storm ultimately made landfall closer south near Siesta Key, with winds roaring 120 miles per hour. By the time landfall was made in the late hours of October 9th, almost 20 tornadoes had already been reported in Florida.
I could actually see it coming from my bedroom window, and it was like watching the movie Twister.
Although Tampa still felt the hurricane's impact with over 100 emergency calls, the most prominent damage was felt in other cities as Milton raged across Florida.
You notice how far back this water goes? This is actually much less water than we saw at the height of this storm.
St. Petersburg's Tropicana Field, home of the Tampa Bay Rays, had much of its fiberglass roof blown off.
Conditions have deteriorated, obviously, when you see the roof just clean ripped off of the stadium there.
The stadium had previously been deemed an emergency staging area. Thankfully, the staging area was relocated with no injuries at the ballpark. Even before Milton arrived, there were plans to revamp Tropicana Field by 2028. The hurricane also caused a crane in St. Petersburg to collapse into the Tampa Bay Times building, although nobody was hurt.
These are new pictures coming into our newsroom of that crane collapse there.
By the early hours of October 10th, more than 3 million in Central Florida were without power.
The good news here, the investments we've made to make our grid stronger, to underground many of those power lines, and to add smart grid technology along the grid, helped us to restore power to approximately 600,000 customers, even as the storm was striking the state.
Although many evacuated, some residents took their chances at home. With the hurricane leading to fuel shortages and the freeways packed, there was a risk of being stranded on the road during the storm. As night turned to day, power lines and trees fell, communities were flooded, boats fell on lawns, and debris flew through the air, one piece hitting Anderson Cooper.
If you look at the graph, whoa, okay, that wasn't good.
He was okay. There was still debris left over from Helene, intensifying the danger. Cleanup crews hurried to pick up the pieces from Helene, only to make way for another disaster.
After a block, people still cleaning up right now while preparing for this next storm, which could be worse out here.
Around 1 a.m., Milton decreased to a Category 1 hurricane. Between morning and afternoon, Milton had passed through Florida, moving into the Atlantic Ocean.
Well, Heather, you can see behind me that the trees, for the most part, from where we are positioned, they were able to withstand those hurricane-force winds.
Although Milton dropped to a post-tropical cyclone status, winds still blew 75 miles per hour, with the threat of a potentially fatal storm surge along the coast of east central Florida and South Georgia.
We actually had to cease all services because it's actually been too dangerous to put my first responders out there on the road.
As Milton moved away from Florida, it started to face the direction of mainland Europe. Experts agree that Milton is unlikely to hit Europe, which has endured its fair share of bad weather as of late with ex-Hurricane Kirk.
The storm caused flooding in Portugal and left 300,000 people without power.
Leading up to its impact in Florida, some, including President Biden, predicted that Milton would be the storm of the century.
But I urge everyone in Hurricane Milton's path to follow all safety instructions as we head to the next 24 hours.
It was even argued that the Saffir-Simpson scale should be expanded to include a Category 6. All things considered, Milton wasn't as catastrophic as some expected, especially in areas like Tampa. Even so, Milton left a trail of disaster behind, with more than 10 individuals injured.
The hurricane and its fierce winds cut a path of destruction across many cities and towns.
Over 10 people also lost their lives, most of which were in the U.S., while at least one was in Mexico. It's been estimated that the price of the damages could range from billions to nearly $1 trillion. It appears the worst is behind Florida, although many made that same assumption after Helene passed.
A little step back here and try to catch our breath.
Amid the recent disasters, Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump has spearheaded a rumor that the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, is running out of money with the Biden administration redirecting funds to illegal migrants. Speaking of Trump, Milton didn't drastically affect his residents at Mar-a-Lago. As for his claims, they are unfounded.
There is no basis for saying that money was stolen from FEMA, money is missing.
The money that goes towards major hurricanes doesn't come directly from FEMA's budget, but rather from its disaster relief fund. According to Administrator Deanne Criswell, FEMA has enough money to assist in the aftermath of Helene and Milton.
We plan for multiple events just like this, but this is going to be a challenge, right? These are two very large events back to back.
Although there were reports of FEMA being understaffed, Florida is receiving additional support from the U.S. Army North, out-of-state firefighters, and other volunteers. Taylor Swift even donated $5 million to relief efforts.
That news from the charity Feeding America, which posted a big thank you message to the superstar.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. While Deanne Criswell says FEMA currently has, quote, sufficient resources, there are long-term concerns. FEMA already spent $9 billion of the $20 billion from its fiscal year disaster fund, which is supposed to last until September 30th, 2025.
Besides hurricanes, Criswell says the agency has dealt with a busy tornado season, historic levels of flooding and wildfires this year.
If the frequency of major hurricanes continues, FEMA may inevitably run into serious financial trouble without additional funding from Congress.
The president noted correctly that he has asked Congress to come back and provide funding so we have stability for the long haul.
Hurricanes also continue to intensify quickly, with experts pointing to climate change.
92-mile-an-hour increase in less than 24 hours, and that is one of the hallmark signatures of what climate change is doing to hurricanes, Hallie.
Even if we've seen the last major hurricane of this season, and that remains an if, there will inevitably come a time when we have to brace ourselves for another Milton or Helene. For now, rescue and recovery efforts are underway with the American Red Cross, the Salvation Army, and others providing a helping hand. If you know of any charities or organizations that assist in disaster relief, please share them in the comments.
We've had some requests already for hygiene kits and other emergency supplies.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.